Hello and welcome into episode 95 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I am your frizzled haired host, Mark Harris. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that my hair is crazy right now. And I am joined by Colton Dodgson, who again is coming at us with what's his name? Brian Janowski
Brian
from Eastbound.
Janowski. No, it's Stevie Janowski of Eastbound and Down fame. Didn't get a chance to
Okay.
change it, but you know what? He he might have a permanent place here if I can't figure this camera thing out. He doesn't get the respect he deserves as a TV character.
Yeah.
Um, I was
I'll take your
thinking,
word for it.
man, if you haven't watched Eastbound and Down, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. So.
It'll be on my
Um,
list.
There you go. Check that out, Mark. I was going to ask you while you were going through your introduction there, do you have anything planned for the 100th episode of this show? Because we've been doing it for a
Yeah.
while now.
I don't have anything planned.
Well, Mark, I don't know. That could be an opportunity, man. Maybe we
You know what I
do.
have planned?
What's
I
that?
have planned that we will be talking about a win
There you
that
go.
week.
There you go. What is that? 4 weeks
Whoever
from
it
now?
comes against.
97, 98, 99, episode 100, 4 weeks from now? Okay.
No, it's 5 because
Is this
this
96?
this is 95.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. It
Yeah,
is 5.
so that would probably be after the Cincinnati game. So yeah, that could happen.
There you go. Maybe we do a special live stream and we
Yeah.
reward the 14 fans of this show that have held steady at 14.
Hey, there's more than that. Anyway, um, you know what a game on Saturday night. It was a weird game, but
Yeah,
you got to tip your hat to Cam Skattebo or Skattebo. I keep making that mistake. I mean, he was an absolute wrecking ball. 262 rushing yards. Just and again,
ice
that
the
final
game.
drive, just every time they gave him the ball, you knew he was going to pick up the necessary amount of yards that he needed to get. I mean, it was a pretty legendary performance, honestly.
It really was. And I think something that's lost in it is the fact that he was only, what is that? He was only 3 yards away from 300 all purpose yards. He had 3 receptions for
Right.
35 yards on top of the 262 rushing yards. He was essentially the offense, right? I mean, Sam Levitt
Yeah.
had a couple rushing touchdowns too, but it was just the rushing attack across the board. Mississippi State had no answer for it. I mean, ASU probably took their foot off the gas a little bit, but 57 carries, 6.1 yards per carry for the team. Um,
Enormous.
and that 346 total yards. It was just a showing running the ball. So, and I mean, that's, yeah, can I help you? Sorry. Okay.
Well,
It was
you're right, Colton. It was, and I mean, offensive line was pretty outstanding. I mean,
yeah,
obviously
100%. I mean,
Scattaboo did a lot of work to gain some extra yards, but yeah,
yeah, man. I
he was
mean,
gaining momentum like crazy.
100%. And I mean, you go down the list, and I think a lot of people will, and some of the things that I've seen in terms of projections for next week, which I'm sure we'll get to that in just a sec, is the maybe an indictment on the passing attack, which I don't necessarily. Obviously, it the next leading receiver was Xavier Gilroy with 14 receiving yards. Sam Levitt had 69 passing yards. 35 of those were to Cam Skattebo. But I kind of look at this as an offense that is, and maybe this is an all-time spin zone, but an offense that isn't necessarily they're going to play within the script of the game. They didn't necessarily need to throw the ball, right?
No,
They Mississippi State had no answer for ASU running the ball. and when you go up big, which ASU was up pretty big in this game before Mississippi State kind of clawed back into it, right? They were up 27-3 at half.
Yeah.
The script favors a heavy dose of running the ball. There really was no reason to throw. I get that 69 passing yards is a tiny number. He only completed 10 of his 20 attempts. It's hard for a quarterback to get into a rhythm when you're handing the ball off, or when your team has attempted 57 rushing attempts, right? Like,
Yes.
how do you expect Levitt to get into a rhythm and this passing attack to get into a rhythm when they don't need to throw the ball? And Dillingham recognized that, right? Things got dicey, and
Yes.
on that last drive, it was just hand the ball to Scat, hand the ball to Scat, hand the ball to Scat, and he didn't disappoint. He probably has another rushing touchdown if he doesn't salt away the clock there at the end. So,
Yeah, no, I mean, like, he technically, I mean, like, he kind of deserved a rushing touchdown on that play, but it was just get down, like, and very smart play. Yeah, I mean, like, I am not worried about. I guess what I'm worried about with Sam Levitt is more that, like, some of his passes were inaccurate, but
yeah,
that's not why they threw the ball so infrequently. Like, it was due to the game script, and it was due to the fact that they were rushing for, what was it, 6.1 yards per carry, but Skattebo was at like 7.9 yards per carry, which is insane against an SEC defense. Now, we need to be clear that, like, Mississippi State, like, that defense is an SEC defense in helmet only,
yeah.
there's no way that
Doing that
your
against
average SEC defense would.
a Power 5 defense in
Yeah,
general,
that's a good
bro,
way. Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's pretty effective. I also said Skattebo would have had another touchdown. I just realized Levitt poached both of his touchdowns. I didn't even see that. So
Well, he really only poached one because it was a
you're right.
sneak.
The
But
other one was special team.
the first Levitt touchdown was a really good run too. Like, he
Yeah,
made a few guys miss in the open field, and that was a play. I mean, as we were watching it in the upper deck, like, it at first looked like, okay, Levitt's got a few yards here on the outside, going to pick up like 8 or 9 yards, and then, oh crap, he's diving towards the end zone.
yeah,
Like, it like, that's why I'm not like the way I would put Levitt. We start talking about Skattebo, but we're just going all over the place. The way I'd put Levitt in that game is, like, as a passer, he did not play well. There's no argument. As a quarterback and as a overall football player, he was okay,
yeah.
because 11 carries for 68 yards. I think that's what it was. Like, that's a decent game, and 2 touchdowns. That's a decent game for just a running back. And that was your second leading rusher and the player who supposedly didn't even play that well in the game. So, and no, Colton, you're right. You that's just basically what Dillingham said earlier this week. He had someone asked him about it in a media session, and he said, like, and some of this was probably covering for Sam, because, again, like, Levitt did miss some throws. This I'm not denying that, but he was like, "Oh yeah, we got out of rhythm, and that's my fault as a coach. I should have said, like, oh, don't get out of rhythm." And it's like, yeah, like, it was fine to get out of rhythm in this specific game, right? In like, in general, yeah, like, you need to mix in some more passes and have that be a bigger part of managing a lead like that. But I thought they managed that specific game very well, and Levitt falling out of rhythm is just a consequence of it, and one that they didn't have to pay for ultimately.
Yeah,
And
100%. Because I think something that's lost in the final score is the fact that this game looked over at half, right? And
yes,
it looked
not
over in the fourth
yeah,
quarter before that 80-yard touchdown
yes,
broke, right? Like,
yes, yes,
this game wasn't overall a competitive game until that last drive that ASU had to kind of salt it away, right? That was the last time that it felt like, maybe this could go another direction. But even then, you're like, they'll probably pull this out. So, I would imagine as a Power 5 quarterback, I would imagine as a quarterback at any level, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to throw the ball when you're doing so infrequently, right?
It's not.
and
Of
you're
course not. Yeah.
no, and you're doing so out of a rhythm, right? This script, and this is what inspires so much confidence for me about this team, is because they did it offensively. They did it in a completely different way than the way they beat Michigan, right? Sam Levitt was 14 of 22 for 258
You mean
yards and two
Wyoming?
touchdowns. Or Wyoming. Did I say Michigan?
You did. Although I
Oh,
think they could
wow.
have beaten Michigan if
Maybe,
you'd put that.
maybe. No, that was I meant Wyoming. That's my
No,
bad.
I get it.
They did it through the big play, right? And a lot of that was,
Mhm.
Kyson Brown had the check down, but Jordan Tyson 12.3 yards per catch, Jake
Right.
Smith 15.7 yards per catch,
The Taylor
Shimon
touchdown was
Taylor
25 yards.
16.
Yeah.
Melquan Stovall had a 28-yard catch.
Yep.
You go down the list, and all of these guys were picking up chunk plays. So you see that the offense is capable of pulling that off too, especially when the rushing attack was still pretty effective in that last game. It was just a lot of different guys chipping in. It wasn't the Cam Skattebo show. But I think it shows over the course of these last two games the versatility of this offense and the way that they can sort of fit the mold of any offensive script, right? They
Yeah.
can they can ice almost an entire game. We saw them do it, right? Until things got a little dicey, or they can just bomb all over you like they did against Wyoming. Granted, it's a little easier to do that when your defense spots you a touchdown in the first 15 seconds of the game, but
Right.
you can't take away from what Levitt was able to do. 11.7 yards per attempt, right, for Sam Levitt.
Yeah.
So he's throwing the ball downfield in that first game, and it'll all be contingent upon what Texas State shows them, but I like the versatility that we've seen from this offense to this point.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that makes it easier is just your offensive line, maybe while not being like a world beater offensive line or whatever, it looks pretty good, especially the
Held up.
interior. The
Yep. It's
interior
held
of
up.
the offensive line, particularly, dominated Mississippi State. They like there was how many behind the line? Like Levitt got sacked once in the last game. There was maybe one play that tackle for loss that they had. Like every play was going forward. And again, it's easier with Skattebo, who, if you're watching on YouTube, you see that he won AP Player of the Week, which is awesome. Like, and he totally deserves it. I believe he's third in the country in rushing yards. And one of the
Yep.
players that's ahead of what?
Yeah, he's third. I was
Yeah.
just confirming.
And one of the players that's ahead of him is Ashton Jeanty, who's a freaking monster. Like
Yeah.
it sidetrack, but like Jeanty is going to be a first round NFL running back. And there's not going to be really any argument of like, oh, running backs don't matter. It's like, with him, like this dude is going to translate. Like he is a beast anyway. But no, I mean, I just can't like the fact that the offensive line is just controlling games and opening up clean running lanes for our running backs. And again, like Skattebo obviously did the rest of the work, and he's the story of this game. He was outstanding. Like it's been a while since you can think of an ASU player dominating like that.
Yeah.
Just one
Yeah.
player, and
Who
it's
would you say was the last one? The first name that comes to mind.
oh man.
See, the first name that comes to mind for me is Balaj, but I almost feel like in that game it was just the product of. But then again, all
Yeah,
they were
that was
doing was running
weird.
that Sparky formation.
Seven of his like 7 of his touchdowns were 1-yarders. Like
But you just said 7 of his. He scored
no,
7.
I get it.
I
I
don't
just
know,
think
but
if you
yeah, I know,
that's
but I feel you. I agree with you. It wasn't as dominant as this. This was like they knew he was getting the ball, and they
yes,
still did absolute. They couldn't do anything.
yes. And I mean just the way he runs, man. Like I saw some people on Twitter like the way they were talking about him was like um that like, oh, he's a fun college player type of guy. Like, no. Cam Skattebo is going to play in the NFL. Okay,
Yeah,
he's versatile.
Don't let Kyle Shanahan get a hold of that guy.
Oh God, please go to the yeah. For both of our sakes, I hope he ends up in the AFC. But no, like he's going to play in the NFL. he is extreme. One, he's just incredibly tough to bring down as a runner. Like, obviously, that's important.
Mm-hmm.
And he's skilled. Like, he can catch the ball. You can throw the ball to him fine. He can throw a touchdown pass like he did last year. He can just truck people. He can. You don't really see him juke guys out, but I think he could for a lot of people. Like, he's not just this like plucky white dude running back. Like, this dude is a legitimate player.
Smart
I would,
runner, downhill runner.
yeah,
He can play
and
within
I would be
multiple
surprised if
schemes.
he gets undrafted this year, barring injury.
Yeah,
So
I,
I
I
mean,
think I think he's shown that maybe he can find a role in at the next level. I think that'd be cool to see. I want to see how he progresses. I think this usage, I
yeah.
mean, we'll see
Well, yeah.
we'll
I
see what
mean,
how that looks as the year progresses. I mean, not even just talking about the NFL conversation, talking about the ASU
yeah,
conversation, right?
yeah.
Like
Oh, for
you want
sure.
to make sure they have the depth. That's what we saw against Wyoming. Is you
Yes.
how many guys get carries? Like 8 or 9 guys
Yeah,
get
it was a
carries.
lot.
You
Yeah.
had
Well, and the other thing is, like, yeah, they're not going to rush him 33 times a game. It's just in this specific game, he was so locked in. It was working so well. It was like, okay, yeah, let's rush him 8. Like, let's keep giving it to
yeah,
him because we know it's going to work, and it's destroying the clock for Mississippi State. Like, why are we not doing this? So, um, and I mean, Rayleigh Brown is it seems very likely that he will play on Thursday against Texas State, right?
yep.
So you have him coming back. We've seen DeCarlos Brooks, like in game one, DeCarlos Brooks was better in terms of the yards per carry. So we've seen him contribute, and all the other guys, Kyson Brown, I didn't even mention, like he'll contribute. And then the two other, McCaskill and Jason Brown, who knows? But like, that's the thing. It's like, one thing I thought of earlier today was it really does seem like a lot of the things we pointed to as strengths on this team this summer are coming true. We
Yeah.
pointed to, hey, the running, like we have really good running backs and it's deep, and that's shown up so far. We mentioned like, hey, the interior of the offensive line with Leaf Faltano and Ben Coleman, like next to each other, is better than people think, and lo and behold, they ran for like 240 yards in game one against Wyoming and then like 360 in the next game. And or I don't know what exactly it was. I'm looking at, but it was like 350 yards. And it's just like, that is so, that being so good at running the ball is repeatable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It is
It's
repeatable.
sustainable. It's sustainable, especially when you see multiple guys do it. When you're seeing multiple guys do it, you touched on it in the
Yes.
beginning. That also points to one, an effective scheme running the ball, and two, the personnel to
Yes.
run that scheme on the
Yes.
offensive line. Guys up front doing what they need to do. And that's been a strength. You know what else has been a strength, Mark? Do you know who has allowed the second fewest rushing yards per game in the entire country?
I'm guessing it's ASU.
It's ASU, 32 rushing yards
That is
per game,
huge.
behind Ole Miss,
Who
who
has
is
only
allowing
played
27,
cupcakes.
but has only played cupcakes. We've played Wyoming and Mississippi State and have allowed
Yeah.
32 yards per rush, or 32 rushing yards per
No,
game.
that's incredible.
So a yard per rush is the
And
average.
by the way, Jeff Clark are yeah, and the eye test backs that out as well. You know, another thing that I want to mention is ASU has not been 100% completely healthy in these first 2 weeks either. Sean Na'a, who would have likely been the starting right guard opposite Coleman at left guard, he hasn't played, so it's been Cade Briggs. There's been no down, like you haven't noticed that at all, right? Before the season, Prince Dorba, a key player from last year, led the team in sacks, hasn't played, no issue. Elijah O'Neal's come in, already has 2 sacks in 2 games, had a pass breakup as well as a sack in the last game. Like, Jeff Clark, the interior defensive lineman, who I think he played against Wyoming, but didn't play against Mississippi State, and didn't matter. They still stoned him on the line of scrimmage. Jamon Tapp hasn't played. It's not like ASU. Rayleigh Brown has not played, as we've mentioned. It's not like ASU is just like, oh, it's just like our health is perfect. No, like this is kind of just like normal level health stuff. Because obviously last year was ridiculous in terms of how unlucky ASU was. But I think that's just one thing that as a Sun Devil fan, you can look back and be like, oh, okay, like our depth kind of has been tested a little bit,
100%. And they've risen to the occasion, right? They've
Yeah.
passed the test, which is kind of what you've talked about. But I mean, they do have a pretty big test coming up on a short week too, man. First road
Sure.
game.
Well, so yeah, I want to get into that. I do want to touch on some stuff before we get into the Texas State game because that's obviously huge. I do want to get into some stuff and just how the game played out against Mississippi State because I do think it's interesting.
Okay.
So I'm going to pull up the drive. I guess let's see, share this tab instead. Here we go. There we go. Popped up. So first of all, ASU first drive forces a 3-and-out punt. That's
Yep.
like, I think like as a fan, sometimes you kind of take those things for granted. No, on an offense like Mississippi State, who does have their offense does have some legit talent, as we saw in the second half. Like just getting them off the field was enormous. And then, oh, by the way, boom, touchdown, 10 plays, 74 yards, 4 minutes. And you can tell they weren't worried about the clock here. You force another punt. This is you generate a holding call. Boom. It's, again, another punt. That's six offensive plays for them that gained 2 yards in their first 2 possessions. That is huge. Okay, you get a field goal. This was just a 27-yard field goal, but a nice long drive. Love it. They get a field goal, but it's 12 plays, a 71-yard drive for a short field goal. Those drives suck as fans, especially when you're down. You just go all this way just to kick a short field goal. That's fine when you're leading, but when you're trailing, that's awful. And then ASU gets another field goal, a 47-yard field goal from Ian Hershey, who he had a short field goal, but 2 45-yard plus field goals for him after he missed one the previous week. Like that was big. I like that made the game much like, let's just say he misses one of those and all of a sudden the end of the game, it's 26-23 versus 30-23. Like the way we would have felt on that 80-yard touchdown would have been even more nervous, So I really have to praise Ian Hershey for this game. Just those ended up being extremely important field goals, You get the fumble return touchdown. Stop them on 4th down was a huge sequence, right close to the end of the half, and then ASU scores before half. So their first half was excellent. But this is what I really want to get into. See this? 14 plays, 46 yards, took off 8.5 minutes, and it ended with a 47-yard field goal for Hershey. So clearly, like, Mississippi State had adjusted a little bit because ASU's gaining 9, 7, 7, 2, 6, 5, 3, 1, 1, 3 yards, 1 yard. So like it wasn't a very crisp. It wasn't the crispest drive in terms of big plays. It just drained the clock, and just going up 30-3 with how much would it be? With 6.5 minutes left in the third quarter and then the whole fourth. Like that was huge. That was such a huge drive. That was really the drive that put the game away, honestly, even more than the defensive touchdown was huge as well. I mean, what a play by CJ Fight. But that first drive coming out of halftime was enormous. And it ended up being extremely crucial at the end of the game,
100%. And you wonder, how much of this was ASU playing a little more conservative, foot off the gas. You're up 30-3. Human nature maybe creeps in a little bit, but
of course it does. Yeah. Like how could it not? I mean, of course.
And you have that fluky play, go down to the last Mississippi State touchdown. I want to see how
Yeah,
long that play was.
80.
Yeah, one play, 80 yards, and it wasn't necessarily like an 80-yard bomb. It was more
No.
of like a crossing play where, the defense missed the assignment and he took it, right? So
Yeah. Well, it was a hitch, and Rouser kind of overran it a bit, and then as Coleman was running, who Kevin Coleman is he's going to probably be in the NFL as well, and you could see with the speed that he just pulled away. Um, and then Alford took a bad angle as he was pulling away, and then touchdown. But that was just I'll push back that I don't think that was a fluky play. Like I think that was just a bad play by ASU's defense.
well, yeah, I mean, anytime you take a hitch 80 yards, it
Yeah.
probably wasn't brilliant offensive gameplay.
No, I get. I guess my point is like I just don't think it was fluky. You know what I mean?
Okay, maybe
Like when I think
fluky
of
was the
fluke,
wrong word, but something where ASU kind of gift wrapped them that
yeah, that's
touchdown a little bit, right?
that's fair.
Probably one that they could have not let up, but they did, and they responded on that last drive. That last drive, 12 plays, 50 yards, 527, right? If they go 3-and-out or even stalled after a first down, you're putting the ball right back in the hands of Mississippi State, who, I mean, just erased a 30-3 deficit almost, right? Their offense
Yeah.
was kind of
Well,
humming a little bit. That would have been a precarious situation to hand that ball back, right? Um, and
yeah.
a lot of that is Sam Levitt, right? Sam Levitt with that 8-yard rush, and then Skattebo picks up what he needs to. They had to go for it on fourth down at their own 34,
Yep.
right?
And by the
Which
way, you know what's funny is like I think everyone there was nobody who was like, "Oh, you got to punt it away." Like everyone was like,
no,
"Yeah, we need to run the ball," and it
on
was
fourth and
obvious
one with
because
how Skattebo was running the ball, like
yep,
you
yeah,
had to. So you pick up that fourth down and then 10 yards. Here, go down a little bit. You got a 10-yard rush. You got a 5-yard rush. You got stalled there, but a 5-yard rush. Then another 10-yard rush. Then you got the 39-yard rush that really puts it away, right?
yep,
Um, so
Niels,
again,
yep.
did what they had to do. Responded well. We don't typically, going back in the history of ASU teams, there's quite a few teams that I've seen play that probably lose this game,
Yeah,
right?
and
Uh,
not just like the two bad teams from the last 2 years. Like
no,
these
some
are like some of the
solid
Herm
teams.
Edwards teams, some of the like a Graham team that went 6-6 or something.
100%, and we've seen that before. So to see them really start to lose the momentum, because they did,
Oh,
momentum
absolutely.
100% swung in favor of Mississippi State after that 80-yard play to cut it to a one-score game. That's a tall order to salt that game away with 5 minutes left, especially going for it deep in your own territory on 4th and 1. You don't get that, which I don't think anybody doubted that they would pick that up, but you don't get that. This game's probably tied. So
Yeah,
who knows? Maybe ASU's defense steps up, but you're handing an offense that has scored, what, 2 or 3 touchdowns on their last 2 or 3 drives, the ball at the 30,
yeah.
34, right? Okay, so they have
So
one punt in there. But either way, man, that drive was massive, and that's not a drive that ASU historically has been able to pull off, which, again, I think is a testament to Dillingham and the job that he's doing.
yeah, totally. And no, you're right about that. It was just that final drive was pretty well managed. I mean, even I believe the incomplete pass by Levitt was a play that was just a bad throw that it was a well-designed play. So yeah, it was an incomplete. It's weird. Like we look back at this game and we're like, oh, it was an incomplete game, but like you led 27-3 at half, and sure it got a little hairy, but like ultimately that's the thing. Like that's what it's like. Oh, like it was clear that you were the better team. You know, it was clear that you were the better team. You weren't like weren't the better team in the sense that you should have won this game by a blowout. Like you weren't that much better, but you were better, And I it's just really encouraging to see, man. It really is. Like I thought ASU could get to 2-0, and obviously the Wyoming game kind of changed everything because just how good they looked.
Yeah.
But just to get to 2-0, and it's due to physical play. It's due to
Mm-hmm.
dominating the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball in both games, right? That's what
Absolutely.
happened. Yeah, against, like you mentioned, solid programs, if nothing else.
Right. You're not doing this against FCS. You're not doing this against the bottom of the barrel, right? You're doing
Yeah.
this against solid teams, right? Teams that, and we'll see how it shakes out in the end, but at the very least, teams who have been historically solid, right?
Yeah.
So it's promising stuff, but I think their biggest. I mean, obviously it's week 3. It's going to be their biggest test to this point, but a real. I don't even know how to put it into words. It's a game that will really tell us not only where this team is, but where this rebuild is, I think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a tough task. Texas State is a very good group of 5 team. They are a trendy playoff participant. They beat Baylor last year to start the year. No, Baylor was not a good team, and last year's Baylor was a lot more similar to last year's ASU than this year's ASU. So I think that is something to keep in mind. But that game was also in Waco. This is playing in San Marcos, Texas, after you know after 4 days of rest. So
Right.
it's a tricky spot for sure. But I actually thought this today, and I think, what are your thoughts on this way of looking at the game? I think this is almost like so much of a trap game that it no longer becomes a trap game. I think it is so obvious of a trap game that it's almost not a trap game anymore because because Texas Tech is just too, or Texas State is just too good.
Yeah, I think it would be discrediting Texas State to call it a trap game. I also think it would
Yeah,
be overvaluing ASU to say that ASU is good enough to even be considered for a trap game at this point, right? They've shown us
I agree.
some pretty promising stuff so far, but I mean, they still haven't done much. Like we're still rebuilding this program. We're still looking for signs of sustainability, and we've seen early promising stuff, but they haven't been on the road yet, right? They haven't had to play on a short week yet. They overcame their first taste of adversity last week. They got hit in the mouth and they responded on that last drive. That's the type of stuff you want to see.
Yeah.
But you said it. This is a Sun Belt team that is a trendy playoff pick. It believes in itself. It's not slated to go on the road until October, right? So this is a team that's comfortable at home. They match up pretty well. They have a solid run defense. They're tied for 18th in terms of rushing yards allowed per game. But, I mean, they've played Lamar and UTSA, struggled with Lamar at home.
Yeah, that I can't – when I'm looking at this game, man, I cannot just not factor that in, struggling to beat an FCS team or not pulling away from an however you want to frame it, like beating an FCS team by 7,
So this is our biggest test, but this is by far their biggest test too. And I think the spread reflects that. I think the spread ASU is getting 1.5 at this point. I think the spread reflects the short week. It reflects ASU going on the road for the first time in this season with this group and the uncertainty of, what will that pose? How challenging will that be? I think that's the biggest element here, right? How well will the run defense travel? How well will the offensive lines travel? What kind of offense are we going to see in this game? We've talked about the pretty versatile approach with all right, we're just going to run the ball down their throats, and in total 60 passing yards. And we've also seen the balanced, deep approach where the passing attack is picking up 15 yards per reception or 12, whatever it was. You got guys with 35 yards per catch on 2 catches, that type of stuff. Like, what are we going to see out of this team, right? So I think it's a little tough to dive into the numbers just because the sample size is so small, and I don't know what you're going to find by looking at Texas State. They've played Lamar and UTSA, right? So I don't know how that benefits us, but like you said, it's a solid group of 5 team. So it's definitely going to be a test, and it's not one they can really take lightly, nor do I think they're taking lightly. I think they will be ready to play this game. So
for sure. So I have a few thoughts on kind of just game and kind of bouncing some things off of what you said. For one, you mentioned the adversity ASU faced in its last game. It was really only a 10-minute stretch of the game because of that
right.
giant drive that only ended up with a field goal for ASU, and then the last 5-minute drive. So it was really kind of it was like the last 5 minutes of the third and the first 10 minutes of the fourth did not go well for ASU. I think I would be more worried about this game if ASU had just kind of cruised. Let's say ASU had won this game 37 to 16. 37 to 17, right? They had gotten one more touchdown drive in the second half, and Mississippi State had gotten one fewer touchdown drive in the second half. I think I would be more worried because they wouldn't have faced that adversity. They wouldn't have kind of had to prove it under adverse conditions in the end of the game, right? So that's one thing that's floating around in the back of my head. Another thing is I don't think UTSA is as good as people think they are. I think the brand name of UTSA is a little bit better for the college fans like us who know that UTSA is a good program. And I think it's a good program, but I just think their team this year is not I think ASU would have destroyed UTSA as well. I think UTSA I think there's a chance they're worse than Wyoming. They beat a new program, Kennesaw State, who just moved up to the to the FBS. So they effectively beat, I think the score was 28-16. This is UTSA I'm talking about, and this is all transitive property stuff. But I guess my thing is with Texas State, I don't know if the 49-10 game against UTSA that they just played on Saturday is as scary as had they done that to UTSA 2 years ago or something. And then third, I just after watching ASU, what was it? It was 240 yards rushing against Wyoming, and then 350 basically against Mississippi State. I just don't think Texas State is going to be able to stop us on the ground. I think we can look at all the numbers and the betting lines and the trends and all this stuff. It's are they going to be able to hold us to 3.5 yards per carry? No, there's no way. And if they do, then you know what? I'm not going to sit here and say that I've studied the Texas State roster super closely. I do know they have a few good guys. Don't get me wrong. They have a good defensive end, Ben Bell, I believe or Blake Bell. He's good, and they have some good. They're a good team. They have some good players. So does Wyoming and Mississippi State, right? I just. If we're there's a good chance this is the worst front seven that ASU will face in its first 3 games,
Yeah.
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Yeah. I finished my point, but yeah.
I was just going to say, looking at this, Texas State is 36th, in the nation in rushing yards per game. 204 rushing yards per game. Obviously account for the level of competition. However, ASU has played 2 much stronger teams than what the Bobcats have seen so far, and has allowed the second fewest rushing yards per game in college football, right? I think that's the matchup to watch. I think if
Yeah.
ASU is obviously 291 passing yards too, but offenses are extremely complementary. If you're able to take an element away, that also leads to possibly that other element lacking a little bit, right? Maybe you force a couple
Yeah.
turnovers. Um, Texas State's quarterback Jordan McLeod has already thrown 2 this year against UTSA and Lamar, right? So you take away
And
the
he's a good
rushing.
quarterback. He is a good quarterback.
Yeah, and I think this offense, again, it's tough to gauge, but they have put up 47 and a half points per game. Not bad at all. Um, I think you slow down. That's going to be the matchup to watch. Is you slow down their rushing attack, that 204 rushing yards per game. I would like to see what the offense becomes. Right, you make an offense one
Yeah.
dimensional, you're kind of able to scheme up an approach a little easier, right? And if ASU has the personnel to slow them down, so if they're able to limit that rushing attack, I think you've got to lean ASU here. I mean, I'm going to lean ASU either way. I think nothing that I've seen from Dillingham or from this team tells me that they won't be up for the challenge to go travel on a short week to Texas and play their first road game of the year, right?
Yep.
Also, I mean, it's not going to be much more difficult than that. Going from a Saturday night game to a Thursday night game on the road, I don't know if they play a more difficult in terms of like travel. I don't know if they have a more
Um,
difficult task than that. Do they?
I think it
I think
depends on how you want to frame going to Cincinnati. I don't know what the bye looks like. Bye stuff looks like for us at that point. I don't think we're coming off a bye.
that's because they play Utah on Friday at home before they play
Yeah,
Cincinnati on the road on Saturday, October 19th. So they do
but the
get,
thing is, like, that's still like going to be a direct flight. Like, it's two big airports, so I don't think that. I think the one that will be the most difficult will be at Kansas State late in the year.
yeah, that will be a
So,
tough road trip. I
but
think this, though,
I
this
agree
is
with
the
your main point
slowest.
though that like I think Dillingham will have them ready to go. I think there's so many, like I mentioned earlier, with just it's such an obvious trap game that I think that is advantageous for ASU in terms of preparation.
Right. And I think this will be the least favorable scheduling, as far as scheduling goes, game that they'll have to play this year.
Yeah, I
The
can see
way
that.
that it sets up on a Thursday in Texas, right, for your first road game of the season, that's a tall ask. I think if they show up and they put all of those, like, how are they going to travel? How are they going to be prepared? How are they going to respond after, 2-0, all of that stuff? I think if they come out and they look strong, we're gonna believe much more. And then they get the mini buy. That's what you get on the back end
Yeah,
of a short week, right? Is you get the
that is huge.
extended rest before the Texas Tech game at 12:30. I love 12:30 kickoffs. That's like
Yeah,
I
I'm
miss
glad we
those
got
so
that.
much.
I'm glad we got
on a
that.
network that we can actually see them play too. So
Yeah, that's nice. No, another thing. CJ Fight mentioned it today at media, and he said that there's just a lot of guys on this team who are from Texas, right?
right.
I think that is something that you can't bake into a line. You can't bake it into your ESPN matchup predictor, which, by the way, gives us 66%. That's kind of higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
You know, uh, so this team does. This is a losable game. I thought no one listen like don't listen to this and be like, oh, like these guys think ASU is just going to come in and roll them and they'll
No.
just run the ball for 8 yards a carry because no. That's not what we're saying. Like this is a losable game. Jordan McLeod could absolutely torch us at points. The running back is good. Ishmael Mahdi. They have some good players, and they have some players who would probably get some players who would get some good playing time at ASU. So I'm not trying to. They're not like they're not a bad program. Like this is a game that you have to be fully prepared for as ASU. I just again we're not at practice or anything, but like I don't think there's a vibe of like, oh, like we can, we just got to take care of business, like no, we need to beat them, like
Right.
it's so yeah, I do think it really could be a blessing in disguise that second half kind of got a little hairy, because then it's like, okay, like this is what we need to do, and it just kind of sends a message to a bunch of 18 to 23-year-old young men that, hey, like you guys aren't as good as you were against Wyoming, you just aren't. And so
Yep.
I think that's a good thing entering this game. And like Blake Shapen for Mississippi State is a decent college quarterback, and I'm not saying ASU like totally like went off against him, but his stat line wasn't that great. It was like 18 of 28 for like 250 and had a ton of attempts, right? Like, and yeah. So I don't know. ASU was, I believe Texas State, like they play fast. They're an air raid type team. Well, ASU just played that against Mississippi State. I think have that aspect of it is really helpful too.
Yeah.
So
I think you mentioned we're not coming out here saying we think this ASU is going to roll over this team. That is not what we're saying by any stretch. I completely agree. For some reason, I also would not be surprised if ASU, just because ASU has defied everything that I thought about them to this point. I just based on what we've seen in the past, right? This is a team that, like I said, not a lot of these teams historically would have been able to come back and overcome what happened against Mississippi State, right? That late push, or keep their foot on the gas against Wyoming and almost shut a team out, right? Like we're seeing things here that sort of support one. These guys are ready to win however the opportunity warrants.
yes,
And they're also capable of doing so. They're versatile. They're deep. They have all of these things. We've been hurt on a scale by this team that I don't know if I would be taking NAU lightly, and obviously U of A shouldn't have either. But I'm so cautious with my ASU expectations that I'm like, man, who knows? They could lose this game. We can't take anybody lightly. But something in the back of my mind is also telling me, like, this could be different. This could be the start of a different program. And this team could be the team that puts them on that path and exceeds all expectations. They're not playing a Power 5 team, right? They're not playing some team that they're favored to lose to, right? They're favored to win this game. 65.7%. That's what the ESPN analytics are giving them. However much value you put into that, whatever, so be it. That's up to you. But one, I just want to win this game. I want them to be up to the test. Obviously, this is a huge game to go get. But I also, obviously, my hot take here is I also would not be shocked if they won this game by double digits.
All right, what's your score prediction, Colton?
Based on my little spiel there, I think I've alluded to the fact that they've pulled me right back in, unfortunately, and we'll see how that progresses. Give me the anticipation, right?
Oh,
I'm doing the math in my head. 31, 34. Give me 37.
Okay.
To 37-24 ASU.
Okay. That's pretty close. I have ASU 35-27. So
cool.
We're kind of in the same page. And I think the defense, man, this defense has impressed me.
Yeah.
Through 2 weeks.
You
can't get 27-3 without the defense playing well. They've scored 3 touchdowns, which that's not going to continue. But, the reason they're scoring touchdowns is because they're pressuring the quarterback, right? Like They're exotic blitzes. They have good, talented players on the front seven. It all adds up.
Yeah. I think they're going to travel well. I think this is going to be the game that really makes some people believe. And whether that ends up being a good thing or a bad thing, I think it's just going to be the fact of the matter, right? I think they're going to travel well. I think they're going to go get it somewhat convincingly. And I think 3-0 going into Kansas, right? Kansas is next on the schedule, I think.
Texas Tech.
Oh,
Texas
you're right.
Tech.
Texas Tech. I was just talking about that 12:30 kickoff. Going and getting that game and then getting the mini bye going into Texas Tech, obviously another road game right back to Texas. But, I mean, Texas Tech is trending in the opposite direction of ASU right now.
Oh, my God, yeah.
It's been not necessarily what they expected, right?
No, Texas Tech is a bad 2-point call by Abilene Christian away from being 0-2.
Yeah, and they've got North Texas this week. We'll see where they're at when ASU gets them, but
I almost hope they beat North Texas by a lot because I don't want them super desperate. I mean, they're going to be desperate no matter what, but I don't want them extra crazy desperate facing us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think this is the game that makes a lot of people believe. I think this is the one that gets us hooked back in officially and starts talking about. I think what did you predict? 5-7. I predicted 6-6.
Yeah, I mean, if they get to this win, then they're going bowling. Just based. I mean, I think it's looking really good that they're going bowling anyway, just based on the Big 12 is just worse than I thought it was going to be so far. It is. The only team I fear as an ASU fan, UCF is actually okay. So maybe there's two. I don't know what to expect from UCF but they have some talent. I would say the only team that I fear is Utah with Cam Rising, because I just watched Oklahoma State and Kansas State on Saturday before the game, and they looked pedestrian. They looked like they have some very real flaws. So yeah. And the other thing about this ASU team, and I think you've kind of alluded to it as we're just talking about them, is this is a serious team.
Yeah.
We've seen some unserious ass ASU teams in recent memory. The 2021 ASU team with Jaden Daniels and Rashad White and Pearsall and guys on defense, and it was a very talented ASU team. There's no doubt about it. That was an unserious team. In a lot of it was because of the result of the investigation or whatever, but the way it played on the field, they were unserious, right? This team is not unserious, and they have more veteran guys than people might think too, and it just seems like they're just business oriented. Let's get the job done, and beyond that, they just have the talent to do it as well. So it's encouraging, and I'll say this: again, we've mentioned this whole entire time that it is a very losable game in Texas State, but even if they do lose this game, unless they really look bad, which I just can't see them just looking completely terrible in this game, I still would probably feel good about the program. I'm okay, yeah, this is a tough spot.
Right.
It's a obvious trap game because of all the things that we mentioned, but I think there's a world where they just lose this game, and it's not because it was a trap game. It's because Texas State has a few guys that are way better than a group of 5 team usually has or whatever, so GJ Kinney, he's a good coach, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's going to be for dumb penalties, or we haven't really seen that many dumb penalties. We've seen some penalties, but we haven't seen many head scratching penalties,
Right. No, I completely agree with you. I think truthfully, if they lost this game and they looked competitive, it could be really easy to just chalk it up as, a scheduling loss, right? It's the unfortunate reality. You got to go play your very first road game on a Thursday. It is what it is. Again, I think both of our predictions reflect we don't necessarily think that will be the case, but it's definitely possible. And I think the optimism after a loss will be entirely contingent upon how they look.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I want to move on to some other stuff quickly. So here I'm going to share another thing. So this is the graphic from Parker Fleming that we referenced last week. It's did we really get beat that bad? So come on, let's load. Obviously at the top it has, I think it's Missouri, and they played Buffalo and they killed them. Like, okay, who cares? Let's go. Come on, computer. There we go. Ohio State, UCF. Again, all of these super high, net success rate margins are all Power 5 versus G5 programs, up to Rutgers and Akron. All of this, and then you get Tennessee destroying North Carolina State, which is an incredible win. Keep going, and then you get down to more some of the Power 5 on Power 5. Look, ASU, even though it didn't feel like it at some points in the second half, like it was clear they were the better team, not by a huge margin, but by a clear margin, and I think that's important when you're projecting ASU into. I think it's important that you have kind of some back end stats, analytics or whatever that show that, hey, you're not pulling these games out of your ass.
Yeah,
and that's encouraging.
As long as we're on the right side of this graphic, I think I'll be happy. But you see Texas State on the right side of this graphic too.
No, that is true. That's why it's a tough matchup.
For sure. Well,
although if you're on the any side, as long as you didn't lose, then you're on the.
Yeah, let's just stay on that right side.
Yeah, and then I actually just saw on Twitter that. Oh, here we go.
Right. Twitter.
Oh no. Oh yeah, X, I guess. Well, here it's not loading for me now, so
it was just funny how you said Twitter. Twitter.
Okay, we have a depth chart out for Texas State. I will show this. This is from Chris Cartman's Twitter page, just to be clear. I want to give people attribution. Okay. On X. There we go. We got a professional show here. Not really. Come on, computer. You are really annoying me today. But yeah, no, I think we're kind of aligned in what we expect from this team on Thursday or tomorrow, most likely when you're listening to this. So, they just got to lean on the run game. And it looks like they'll be able to do that now that we see, it says Rayleigh Brown's still injured. That's unfortunate. I don't think that's like a game-changing thing, but it's unfortunate. Or at least, we don't know if he'll play. But you got Jeff Clark. It looks like he's back in. That's good. And Jamon Tapp is on the depth chart. Again, that's good. So they're less injured entering this game, but they still are a little bit injured. Tough. I wish we could have seen Rayleigh Brown. That injury must be a little bit more than they expect. So
yeah, hopefully here soon. Hopefully if they're holding them out. I mean, like I said, that's the benefit of that mini bye before Texas Tech, right? Hold them out. Maybe that's the approach they're taking, the more of a cautious approach, right? It's a short week. You hold them out for this game, give them even more time to rest up for that next one. So,
for sure, I do understand that, but I thought that he would be back by this game, So I don't know, but that's unfortunate. I've been really wanting to see him play defense. Jordan Crook back in the lineup. He's been injured. Linebacker. That's big. So they're coming fairly healthy. And again, like we talk about the depth of the running backs, like when you can, afford to go into a game and it's like, okay, Rayleigh Brown's not playing, but we still have Cam Skattebo who ran for 260 yards the game before, and Kyson Brown has been really good, and DeCarlos Brooks, who we know is solid. Like it's a pretty good spot to be in, considering, gestures at everything that happened to this program in the past 2 or 3 years. So I have one more thing to talk about, and it's about ESPN FPI, the Football Power Index. And again, this isn't the gospel truth or anything. It's just a analytics tool that is used to project future games. So this is Sun Devil sourced a nice little write up, and it basically showed that ASU has now passed Arizona. Right now, they're up to 35th in the nation. So they think that ASU, by this metric, is the 35th best team in the country, which that feels right. That doesn't feel crazy.
No, I think that's
They
pretty
don't look like a top. Yeah, their second half negated them from being a top 25 team, in my opinion, against Mississippi State. Like, we weren't walking out of that stadium on Saturday night being like, that's a top 25 team for sure. We're like, this could be a top 25 team, and that's kind of where they are. So they give, as we saw, a 65% chance to beat Texas State. So just according to this metric alone, that puts you at 3-0. Then at Texas Tech, they give you an even higher. They give you 66.3 chance to win. So there's a chance. That's 4-0 right there. Again, at home against Kansas, 55.2% chance to win. So again, just based on that alone, that's 5-0. At home against Utah, what do you think the percentage is, Colton?
Oh, Mark, I'm going to take a wild guess and say 42.8.
Holy wow, 42.5.
So I was looking at the ESPN FPI. So not really a wild guess.
You dirty dog. But I'll say this, like, that is a almost 50-50 chance against the team that looks like the best team in the conference, right? At Cincinnati, 60% chance. So if all of these just go exactly as ESPN predicts, you would be okay. 4-0, 5-0, 5-1, 6-1 after beating Cincinnati. At Oklahoma State, 37.3% chance. Okay, 6-2. You'll take it. At home against UCF is the interesting one. They give you a 43.5% chance to win. So I don't really agree with that, but okay. I mean, we're just going by them. That's 6-3. At K-State, 27%, basically. That's 6-4. Okay. At home against BYU, 65.2%. Again, so that's 7-4. At U of A is 47.7% chance. So that's a coin flip, essentially. If ESPN's effectively predicting you to be a 7-5 team, that if it gets a lucky break here and there, then goes 8-4, which
that's solid, man. I mean,
which to just say that is like, whoa,
exceeded even our expectations, and I thought our expectations were a little optimistic, but I think we have the benefit of, we don't follow. I mean, I'm not at every practice, neither are you. We don't follow them as closely as like beat reporters do, but I still think we follow the team pretty closely, and I think we kind of knew what it was trending toward. I don't know if we knew it'd get here this quickly, but I think we're seeing that we were kind of onto something a little bit with how we felt the direction that the program was headed in.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think you're okay. No, but like, it does show that, like, if you do lose this game against Texas State, it's not like this death knell to bowl eligibility.
No,
getting
not
to
at
a
all.
bowl game just feels, the margin for error that you have on a game-to-game basis and on just over the course of the season is so much greater than it was entering the season. Entering the season, this was a team that we thought, okay, like, they look like a 5-7 team that hopefully, if some things break their way, they could go 6-6. And now you've just bumped, just based on their performance and the performance of the rest of the league, you've just bumped them up. And again, this is still facing the schedule as well. So, I don't know. I'm happy with where the team's at, man. It's encouraging to just come on here and our complaints about the team, like, oh, they had that one bad play, or oh, in his second career start, like missed a few throws, but overall he still played okay. It's like it's not like, oh my gosh, we're getting gashed. We're allowing 5 yards per carry, and the only reason we won is because we had a fluke pick at the end of the game or something. And
Right.
we've been acquainted to that, and it's really encouraging just the way that they're winning, man. It's just encouraging. I'll just repeat myself again, but yeah.
Without a doubt. I'm with you.
All right. Well, I think we've rambled on enough for this episode. So you have ASU winning 37-24.
I believe that's what I said. Yeah,
Right.
37-24.
All right. I have them winning 35-27. We have been 2-0 in our, not in our score margins of the games, but in our what we final results of the game. So hopefully that goes to 3-0. Yeah, Colton, any final words before we close this one out?
No, man, I think we covered it all.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Please rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Please follow the College Huddle on all social channels and thecollegehuddle.com. And as always, go Devils, baby. 2-0.